Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Matt. Thanks for stopping by the channel. Now I've got another interesting pattern for you today. This is another one from Randall Scott Stetzer's Flies the Best 1000. It's another caddis dry fly pattern. If you recall, this book has 6 pages of just caddis dry flies, so this is another one of them. And this one is called the Bucktail Caddis. Now, I couldn't find a lot of history on this fly, but Stetzer says it was tied by Umpqua feather merchants, so it leads me to believe that one of their pro tyers came up with this thing maybe 30 years ago. So how is this thing different from a regular elk hair caddis? Well, it's got a tail on it. It's got black moose body hair for the tail, and it doesn't have the standard clipped elk or deer hair for the head. It's just got a thread head. But it's no harder to tie than a regular elk hair caddis, and I'd pretty much fish it just the same. But the recipe does call for this in a size 6 to 12. So it makes me think it's meant to be fished out west in some of the really big rivers out there. Maybe even some of the stillwater lakes where you got a caddis hatch going on. But I'm going to tie it in a size 12 today. I'm an East Coast tailwater fisherman, and the caddis flies we have around here are just not that big. But it's a pretty cool pattern, very simple to tie. I think you're going to like it. Let's give it a shot. So there's one in the vise. This is an orange bucktail caddis. What I'm about to tie, I'm going to tie it yellow. And I'm tying it on a size 12 standard length dry fly hook, which is kind of stubby when you're used to using, 1X and 2X longs. And I'm going to use yellow thread. It's a 70 denier UTC. I'll lay a base down all the way to the start of the bend. Now the tail on this guy, moose body hair. This stuff right here, just black. Now this is kind of hollow, but not at the ends of the tips. So I'll put a little bit in my stacker. I don't know, what's this, 10, 12 fibers maybe? Maybe a little bit more than that, but so if you see this, if you tie this in way up here at the front, it's gonna flare on you, but when you just use the tips, it's not all that hollow. There'll be a little bit of flare, but it's not gonna be too bad. So maybe a hook gap in length right there. Take a couple of tight wraps or medium wraps. Let's see, is that gonna flare on us a little bit? Not too bad, that's fine. So I'm gonna leave this in here, just keep it as part of the underbody. Go ahead and take some loose wraps up here to where the front of my body is going to be. And then you can put a tight wrap or two right here. Flare this moose body hair up. Go ahead and snip this off. Just bury that a little bit, but take your thread on back, and we're going to tie in the hackle that we're about to palmer. Just brown dry fly hackle. And what I do, I usually don't measure, don't often use my hackle gauge. I probably should more, but I'll just take a feather like this and wrap it around. You want this hackle to be about to the hook point, so that's too long right there. I'm just going to slide it down until I get the length I want, which is about right there. So I mark that spot on my feather, which is right there where my thumbs are, and then I just pull it back, strip a little back, get a tie-in point. Now I will tie it in right back here toward the back. And one thing I like to do here, well, I'll leave a little bit of bare stem showing, but I'm trying to align this feather in here where it's the plane of the feather is perpendicular to the plane of the hook, which I'm not sure if you can understand what I'm saying, but imagine the plane of the hook is up and down, and I want the plane of the feather to be fore and aft. That way it will just be, they'll be more perpendicular when we start our wraps. Okay, now since we're doing yellow, I'm taking yellow wool yarn. This is a 3 or 4 strand, so this is a full piece right here. And after you separate a few pieces, you'll get something that looks, kind of like this. Don't worry that it's crinkly. I mean, you're not going to notice that when we pull it tight to wrap it. Now, if you don't have a yellow wool yarn, use any yellow yarn. If you don't have any yellow yarn, I guess use any yellow dubbing. Fur, synthetic, it'll all be fine. So just catch this in. And I'm not letting my body get too bulky here. I want it to be, fairly thin. Take your thread on back, not all the way up, because we do have this big deer wing we're putting on it. So go ahead and wrap this up. Just keep it even and smooth. It's wool, so it's going to be a little bit fuzzy looking, but that's fine. Now when you get it up front, go ahead and catch it off with a couple wraps up here. Now let's palmer this brown hackle up. My first wrap, right back here at the tail. I'm still trying to keep this perpendicular. And you might have to, switch grips with your fingers as you wrap it up, just to keep it from spinning around on you. But 4 or 5 turns up should be fine. Now catch that off with 2 good tight wraps, and maybe 3. Let's go in here and snip this. We might have a few sticking forward. We can snip at the same time we're snipping this excess right here. Okay, we'll just minimize a little bit of the cleanup. So for the wing, it's called a bucktail caddis, but we're using deer hair. You can't really stack bucktail to make a nice caddis wing. It's not a real big chunk, maybe about this much right here. Go ahead and put that in your stacker. Give it a few good whacks. And let's see how well it's stacked. Okay, those tips are pretty well aligned. I think that'll work. Now, if you have too much, just go ahead and grab it right here and pull some of the thinner ones out. I think this is about the amount we want right there. And that's going to be a little bit long. So just measure your lengths. And I don't want it as long as the tail, but maybe midway down the tail. So I'm going to switch hands. Make sure your thread is hanging where you want to catch it in, which I need it to be back just a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and snip this off right here where my fingers are. Because it's not an elk hair caddis, we don't leave that big head up front. So 1 or 2 wraps right there, just medium wraps, check it. Now we can put some tight wraps. And we're going to bury all the butt ends of this deer hair wing. So you might, if you didn't cut it off short enough, what you can do is, try not to let it spin around on you, but just trim a little bit of this if you need to. I don't think I necessarily need to. I should be able to bury most of these in a head. So let's give it a shot. Just take the thread right back up to the eye and then build this ramp up. And it is going to be a little bit bigger a head than we typically like on a dry fly, but that's the cost of doing a head like this where you don't have these butt ends sticking up. So just be careful not to cover your eye and obstruct it. As long as you can still get your tippet through there after you put some head cement on it, we should be in fine shape. Okay, so yeah, it is a little bit big of a head, but we can live with that. It's part of the fly, and that's why we use this yellow thread. So a 4-turn whip finish, a drop of head cement, and the bucktail caddis will be done. So that's it, my friends. Pretty easy pattern to tie. I appreciate you watching. Y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.